Hi, everybody. This is David Darkangelo. We're going to get started in about 1 minute here. We have Jim on. Jim, great to have you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, everybody, about 30 seconds. We'll get started. Looking forward to it. A really, really, really great event tonight. Okay. Okay. We got everything on that side. Okay, everybody. Hi, everybody. This is David Darkangelo. I'm your host tonight, and I have my special guest, Jim Poole, CEO of Solace Life Sciences, the parent company for NuCalm. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Thanks for having me, David.
We have a theme tonight. Everybody's invited onto this, but traditional and holistic medicine and all fields related in the medical community or health and wellness. So that's what we want to focus on. And Jim, my first question is is kind of like, what are NuCalm's key scientific differentiators over any other technology in the market? But really, that question lends to what really truly makes NuCalm different.
Well. First of all, thank you everybody for joining. And when you speak traditional medicine, holistic medicine, functional medicine, integrative medicine, you will always get our attention. Allopathic medicine's got some challenges, mostly economically driven pharmaceutical intervention and marketing. So welcome everybody, and thank you for all that you do. That's a big question to unpack, and I will try to say this diplomatically. We're a neuroscience company. Neuroscience, with an expertise in the study of the human nervous system. I came into this world of NuCalm 17 years ago with as much skepticism as anybody would, and I spoke directly to the inventor, and I didn't understand probably 80% of what he was telling me. So we should be skeptical of something that sounds too good to be true. We should be skeptical of things we don't understand. Now, it doesn't mean that we need to understand them to believe them. Proof's in the pudding. But number one, we're the only product in the entire category that went through the FDA as an FDA Class 3 medical device, the highest regulated medical device in the world. We went through Health Canada, which is probably more stringent than the FDA. We went through military approval, a 13-month closed-door evaluation and vetting process for the United States military. We have 52 medical advisors, the best and the brightest in the world, academicians, research scientists, and doctors, from psychoneuroimmunology to medical oncology to the world's leading statistical biophysicists to mathematicians at NASA. Our research, primarily for the patent, was done on stage 4 cancer patients versus the Chicago Blackhawks for 5 years, and the data, the raw data, was analyzed by the world's leading mathematicians, Dr. Chung Kang Pang and Dr. Norton Huang. So one of the cool things about not inventing NuCalm is I have no ego attachment, David. I'm as skeptical as everybody, and I'm also learning. So in 2009, I went around the United States and knocked on the doors of the best and the brightest academicians and scientists in the world. And you know what I did? I said, "Hi, Dr. Pang. Our scientist is smarter than you." "What?" "This is what he invented." "What is it?" "I don't really know. Would you help me corroborate this or destroy it? But I'm not going to influence your voice. I will not give you anything for free, and I will not pay you anything. But furthermore, I also won't impose my will on your research design. I suspect, because you're the world's leading statistical biophysicist, that you figure out how you want to study this." So that's what we did. When I say 5 years of research, we showcase irrefutable quantified evidence, mostly in the form of heart rate variability, respiratory sinus arrhythmia, quantitative EEG and EEG. But we showed, despite the chaos of stage 4 metastatic cancer versus the Chicago Blackhawks, 23 players who are elite athletes, NuCalm had the same impact on the nervous system of both. Within 5 minutes, we dropped the sympathetic tone, which is the stress response, or the LF, the low frequency, to almost nothing. You need to have some tone or you're your heart doesn't beat. And we raise the parasympathetic, which is the high frequency. So for example, if you came into NuCalm 5 minutes before, you had a single lead ECG device attached to your chest, and you sat there, we were capturing 5 minutes pre-NuCalm. And in this, we're seeing your current state of affairs. And most people were at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1 ratio, sympathovagal balance, their sympathetic tone over their parasympathetic tone. And within 5 minutes, we reverse that to create parasympathetic dominance. This is profound. And the fact that it's on these discrete audiences that are extremes, and it does this every time, there you go. So in 2015, David, our product NuCalm was awarded the world's first and only patent for a system and method used to balance and maintain the health of the human autonomic nervous system. So for those of you who are studying the art of intellectual property and patents, you already know what we had to do. The onus falls on the company to prove two things. One, novelty of the invention. Whatever we're saying we invented has never existed before on Earth. Number two, irrefutable quantified evidence to prove the claims. Well, on that claims, there are 27 of them. And this is public domain. So you can go to the USPTO and read the patent, and you can see with exceptional comprehension exactly what we did. And you can also see affidavits from the world's leading scientists showcasing. I had no idea what this was. I had no idea what it would work, and I can't believe how powerful it is. So scientifically, there's no company in this space that has done the FDA, done the Health Canada, done the military, done the patents, has the 52 medical advisors, the clinical studies. But I think if we just speak like experience-wise, we've done over 2,700,000 surgical procedures replacing general anesthesia. So prep work doesn't involve anesthesiology and benzodiazepines. Prep work involves a headphone and eye mask, and then you wheel that person into the operatory and they get operated on. I would challenge anybody to use any other tool. You want to try Brain Tap, you want to try Endel, you want to try Calm, you want to try Headspace, go have a surgery done with that and let us know how that goes. It's not going to go well. So hopefully that helps illustrate that piece. But David, the key here is, why is this different? And my response to that is, we're a product of one. We've been pioneering this for 36 years. We have stood alone as one. It's probably because Blake was a genius amongst geniuses and spent 19 years trying to figure this out. What did he figure out? What is NuCalm? What are we doing? We are presenting the brain with precise signals, and the brain is synchronizing to these signals. We are using delivery mechanisms in the form of binaural signal processing and isochronic waveform. We are presenting to the brain a pitch and frequency mathematical matrix, and the key and the secret sauce, and why NuCalm in 2021 was awarded our second patent for a method used to elicit a state change in a human brain. Let me repeat that. Methods used to elicit a state change in a human brain, which by default means that there's no other product in the world that can make that claim. That's right, they can't. How did we do that? This is where Blake's genius shines through. Binaural beat and binaural signal processing is cool. It illustrates the compensatory mechanism of the human brain. If we wanted to present your brain with 4 hertz, we could do 512 hertz in your left ear, 508 hertz in your right ear. When the caudate nucleus of the midbrain receives these signals from the auditory motor cortex, it says, hey, these are asynchronous. And the brain naturally subtracts the difference. It's compensating. That is fascinating. I love that. But binaural beat, ladies and gentlemen, is a delivery mechanism. It is how you're delivering something. So the great anecdote is, I like pizza pie. David's from Boston. I'm from Boston. We've got good pizza pie in Boston. And then I lived in Delaware, and Philadelphia's got great pizza pie. I love pizza. So say I order a pizza. When the delivery boy shows up, I don't eat the delivery boy. That's binaural beat. I eat the pizza. So what is it you're presenting to my brain? This is Blake's brilliance. He understood, hey, binaural beat's cool. Isochronic waveform is cool. But if I don't trick the reticular activating system of the human brain, the world's most incredible pattern recognition machine, you'll build resistance. So the key in how NuCalm is so different is that the physics and the algorithms and the math, we use a nonlinear oscillating algorithm. What does that mean? That means that the matrix is dynamically, perpetually, always changing. The reticular activating system will never figure out the pattern because it never stops. So for any of you studying the art of the Monroe Institute, HoloSync, the Silva system, the David system, these have been around for 30, 40 years. Bob Monroe was an ad executive. Silva was a radio engineer. The HoloSync people were two guys that liked meditation. These were not neuroscientists. They didn't understand the complexity of what they would have to accomplish. Blake did. And it took him 19 years to invent NuCalm. And the key was the nonlinear oscillating algorithm that could trick the reticular activating system. So if you want the core underneath all the layers of the complexity of NuCalm, that, my friend, is a differentiator that nobody's going to duplicate that. And if someone says, hey, is someone going to steal from you, or is someone going to do that? Well, my answer is, of course it's possible, but I don't know a lot of people that have the intellectual capacity of Blake Holloway. In fact, I don't know anybody. I don't know a lot of people who would spend 19 years inventing it and 17 years we've spent refining it. I also don't know anybody that would work with the best mathematicians in the world who took 6 of our medical devices to Taipei University Hospital in China for 6 months and tried to reverse engineer it and failed. So I think we're pretty good as a standalone therapy. In the world of science, we have proven this ad nauseum, that what we do is effective, safe, and predictable, and there's nothing else like it on the planet. Check the box there. Now it's about awareness, marketing, and getting this on people's heads.
Yeah. The next question is it just seems to me it's just so packaged so right. Where can NuCalm make the biggest real world difference in their practice?
Oh, it's really easy.
Yeah.
Today we're in crisis. I think it would be difficult to argue against this statement, and it's a demoralizing statement. And I'm not here to demoralize. I'm pathologically optimistic like you, David. But the human race appears to be in a race to erase the human race. We're in trouble. We are in constant crisis, constant state of uncertainty and stress and fear, anxiety and anticipatory anxiety, worry, cardiovascular disease, immunosuppressive disease, so many diseases of the gut, all related to too much cortisol. Our monkey minds are in overdrive. Our amygdalas are overinflamed. We, with NuCalm, solving the midbrain applied neuropsychobiology, literally of your midbrain. We have gone into your midbrain and we've solved the stress response. This isn't a symptom management. It's not a Band-Aid. We go into your midbrain and we stop the amygdala, the HPA axis, and your ability to secrete adrenaline. We stop all the chaos. When your brain is at 4 hertz with rescue, your body is healing. We don't need a gizmo and a gadget. We don't need vagal nerve stimulation, transcranial direct current stimulation, cranial electrotherapy stimulation, supplementation. We don't need cause and effect where we do something I hope the vagus nerve pays attention, and I hope we raise the parasympathetic nervous system. No, we went right to the source of your brain and your body. We went to the brainwave. It doesn't get any more direct and source because without your brainwave, you're dead. So we went right to the brainwave. We oscillated down to 4 hertz. And at 4 hertz, David, that's where the magic happens. At 4 hertz, your vagus nerve is fully engaged. At 4 hertz, your parasympathetic nervous system is fully dominant. At 4 hertz, your sympathetic tone is almost nothing. At 4 hertz, your cells are cleaning their toxins and doing their cellular maintenance. At 4 hertz, your mitochondria is restored. At 4 hertz, your breath is 1 breath every 10 seconds. At 4 hertz, you're oxygenating your prefrontal and frontal cortex. I hope people are starting to figure this out. 4 hertz, ladies and gentlemen, is the key. It's the coup de grace of healing. It's why you need to sleep, and it's the restorative aspect of sleep. So what do you think could happen if, with predictability, precision, safety, and reliability, we can take everybody's brain to 4 hertz and hold you there? We can balance the nervous system of 8.4 billion people and liberate them from stress, in effect, liberate them from disease and the acceleration of disease, and in effect, liberate them from poor sleep. I don't know. I'm thinking it's a pretty big deal, and we should probably look into this.
You have a phrase you use. It supports the healing zone. Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't just support it, it kind of suspends it. It was in 2011. Dr. Chung Kang Peng, it's hard to articulate how smart he is, but he has over 65,000 medical citations. He's the inventor and the godfather of heart rate variability. Every algorithm in the world for measuring heart rate variability comes from his multi-scale entropy mathematical models. He and Norden Huang built the Hilbert-Huang transform algorithm for the space shuttles. These guys they got it going on. In 2011, Dr. Chung Kang Peng called me up and he said, Jim, did you know that 20 minutes of your product is equivalent to 2 hours of restorative sleep? And I said, CK, I didn't know that. In fact, I don't really know what you're talking about. And he said, well, in the sleep architecture, Jim, it's the first cycle's maybe 100 minutes and then the next one's 90 minutes. But in sleep, you need to kind of oscillate through theta because theta is the healing zone and the restorative aspect of sleep. This is why we need to sleep as a human species. And what you guys are doing is you're using math and physics and you're slowing down my brainwave and you're holding me in this sweet spot. So I'm getting like, you remember back in the day, you and I growing up, fresh squeezed orange juice was like, what? That's incredible. We had to get concentrate in the freezer section. That's what this is doing. It's a concentrated version of restorative sleep. So we're taking you to the healing zone and we're facilitating your body's natural healing processes. So anybody who's listening, if you're a holistic practitioner, a functional medicine doc, an integrative medicine doc, an allopathic doc who has moved to integrative and holistic, hormonal regulation therapy, if you're a DO, if you're a chiropractor, you know something that most people don't. Everything begins with a balanced nervous system. Nobody's nervous system's in balance. Anything you do to that person with a balanced nervous system is more effective, more efficient, and better. Everything you do to someone without a balanced nervous system, you're imposing your will and you're dealing with inefficiencies. So for us personally, we use NuCalm in IV therapies. We use NuCalm in chemotherapy. We use NuCalm in dialysis. We take this patient who's hypervigilant and not happy to be there and we turn them into a monk-like practitioner with a balanced nervous system. And theta is the key.
Wow. Jim, just every time I hear it, I learn something completely different. And it's not like small incremental, they're like big jumps. And I hope everybody out there is feeling the same. Let me see a last question and maybe we'll open it up and take a few questions is, how might NuCalm support people facing significant health challenges?
You know, early on in the journey, we started working with cancer patients early on. We started working with Department of Defense, war fighters, complex trauma, addiction, neurodegenerative diseases, immunosuppressive diseases. And early on, I just started seeing this pattern and started, in my mind, coming into clarity. Stress is the most nefarious, worst thing about the human condition. Stress not in the form of cortisol and adrenaline and I got to do my to-do list or I got to perform or I got to speak in public or whatever that's a different stress. I'm talking about chronic stress that diminishes the autonomic nervous system, depletes your ability for restorative sleep. It's going to kill all of us. So I've done about 550 medical CME lectures. And I used to start with, guess what, everybody? Everybody in this room is going to die from stress. Unless you're lucky enough to die from an accident. Now, it's not going to say on her death certificate, Jim Poole died of stress. No. It'll say maybe cardiovascular disease or cancer or whatever. Caused by stress. We know this. We know the direct correlation. Stress creates the disease. But then once the body is in disease, Stress accelerates the disease, accelerates the depreciation of the organism, and creates poor sleep. So when we're in disease and we need restorative sleep the most, we need stress management the most so that our bodies can heal, restore mitochondria, all these aspects of healing, we get it the least. It almost seems like a conspiracy against us. It's not. Your amygdala has millions of years of neuronal circuitry. And when we're activated in fight or flight, man, it's a bully. It's going to do its job, and it's going to be fully active to just really consume all of our resources. So any disease, we don't need to study 100 different diseases, David. Every disease on earth was created by stress, and every disease on earth, the symptoms are exacerbated by stress. So if you have multiple sclerosis, you do NuCalm, less symptomology, less frequency, less pain. If you have Parkinson's, less symptomology, less shaking, less lack of inertia. There's anything related, and everybody knows this. You don't need, hey, have you done a study on this? No, we don't need to. Our study is on balance in the nervous system. Deductive reasoning would state, hey, if you're less stressed and you have Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, MS, ALS, your life is better. And we've seen this across every disease state known to mankind for years. We stay in our lane, David. We relax the stress response. We give you restorative sleep. The body knows how to heal you. We've been working with stage 4 cancer for 11 years with Dr. Janet Ranicky, MD, PhD, psychoneuroimmunologist, and an amazing angelic force of nature. And we've helped thousands of people with stage 4 cancer whose medical oncologist has told them, we can't help you anymore, go home and get your affairs in order. They're still alive. NuCalm didn't cure cancer. NuCalm cured the stress and gave them restorative sleep, and their body knew how to heal. So yes, any disease, NuCalm to the rescue. We're not restructuring the brain. We're not, we can remove amyloid plaque through several different modalities, but we're not bringing back the pre-disease state. We're stopping the depreciation of the disease. We're improving the quality of life, and we're allowing the body to heal itself.
Jim, we're going to take a few questions now. That as everybody digests that information, let's see what they're thinking and tackle some of these questions. Here's an easy, simple one. Why might Reiki, R-E-I-K-I practitioner be open to NuCalm?
Why wouldn't you be? Everybody from monks to Reiki to any type of therapy we've ever worked with, it's an adjunct to anything you're doing. So anybody comes to see you, you want to do the therapy. If they come to see you like this, and most people will, how about if you downregulate the body, even during the Reiki therapy? So craniosacral therapy, you'll ask people, say, how does that work? Well, I'm working with the fascia, I'm working with the lymphatic system, the glial system, and I'm doing a lot of work, and it takes me a while to allow that person to downregulate. That person on NuCalm, within 60 seconds, they reach a still point. Any therapy we've ever worked with, we've worked with every type of therapist. NuCalm is an exceptional augmentation because it balances the nervous system, making any therapy intervention faster, more efficient, and longer lasting.
Right. Jim, can it help people with type 2 diabetes?
Of course it can.
Yeah.
Anytime you balance the nervous system, you also balance the hormonal dysregulation, regulation. You balance leptin versus ghrelin. Everything, you guys, this is the source of all things health related. A balanced nervous system is the source. So yes.
How does PEMF, which stands for pulse electromagnetic field, how does PEMF products technology compare with NuCalm?
It's not even the same ballpark. Stacking PEMF is kind of cool. So if you're doing PEMF, say you have the Beamer mat and you're looking for circulation stuff, you can't really feel PEMF. So in 2019, there was an organization in New York City was charging a lot of money for people to come in and do PEMF, and The proprietor's like, listen, people are upset because they do this and they spend a lot of money and they don't feel anything. Can we stack this with NuCalm? I said, of course you can. They stacked it with NuCalm. You downregulate the nervous system while you're doing the PEMF. Great combination. But in reality, think about this. PEMF can do, like, I have the amp coil. I love the amp coil. It can do some localized work for me. We're not delivering frequency to the body. We're modulating your brainwave frequency. This isn't apples to apples. This is apples to whatever fruit you love.
Yeah.
We're the other fruit you love.
Yeah, you're changing frequencies.
We are changing your brainwave frequency. There's a 41 hertz range, and we are modulating your brainwave frequency. We are not interested in localized frequency. Now, in our delivery, we use 528 hertz, 432 hertz. We've been working with the solfeggio scale for 17 years when people couldn't spell solfeggio. We're really familiar with the frequency delivery mechanism, but that's just an add-on. We're modulating your brainwave frequency. We are not delivering frequency. So we're not in the same discussion point. Now, stacking, I think, is amazing. And stacking helps a few things. Number one, biohackers and people who want longevity and resilience, they don't have 8 hours a day to do 20 minutes of this. And I'm going to do CVAC, and I'm going to do cold plunge, and I'm going to do red light, and I'm going to do sauna. So stacking becomes just a matter of efficiency, and I'd like to get this done. So for me personally, I do rescue every day with a red light panel. So that's my stack. There's a lot of people that do PEMF with NuCalm. That's their stack. So there's a lot of ways to go about stacking this, but you're not going to find contraindications to NuCalm because NuCalm is unlike anything else you're doing, and we're not delivering frequency to the body with any specificity. We're modulating your brainwave frequency.
Okay, I've got a long question. When using rescue, we focus on the music playing and try to stop our thoughts from entering in, or do we try to think about anything? I ask because when I use the apps, past experience comes into my mind and I don't know if I should try to stop that from happening and focus on the music and letting the algorithm do its work.
All right, that's an awesome question, and it speaks to someone who hasn't used this enough, but has an intellectual curiosity and maybe a little locus of control. So here's what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, and this hopefully will elucidate the complexity of why this is so challenging. Our job is to separate your monkey mind from your body. Our job is to disable the amygdala. Our job is to suspend your mind's control matrix. So anytime you're even thinking, what should I think about? You're thinking, okay? So we don't want that.
Yeah.
Lie down, take a breath. Say to yourself, allow me the opportunity to relax. Literally tell your subconscious mind, allow me the opportunity to relax. The first 4 minutes of rescue in Rescue 20, and the first 7.5 minutes of rescue in Rescue 30, 40, or 50. We call the departure lounge. Your locus of control, your central nervous system, will not allow your body and your brain to be hijacked. So if you said, hey, try this rescue thing, oh, and by the way, I need you to relinquish your visual cortex and put an eye mask on. I need you to relinquish your auditory by putting a headphone on. And you just got to trust me. It doesn't work that way. Your central nervous system's like, what is this? Not going for that. So we can't take you to 4 hertz with immediacy. It doesn't work that way. So the first 4 minutes and the first 7 minutes of rescue, 20 is 4 minutes, and all the others are 7+ minutes. We call it the departure lounge. We're taking you down, we're taking you up. We're taking you down, we're taking you up. We're literally seeking permission from your central nervous system to begin the journey into theta. But here's where it's fun. Those first few minutes, if you have a locus of control, a control issue, well, guess what? Those first 4 minutes, you are going to be thinking through stuff. Hey, should I be thinking about the music? I'm thinking about what I'm having for dinner. What am I thinking about? It doesn't matter what you think about because you can't stay linear on any thought pattern. You can't solve any problems in rescue because of the nonlinear oscillating algorithm. It's all related. But at minute 7 of Rescue 30 or minute 4 of Rescue 20, your brain begins to separate from your body and you start to feel the power of gravity. You will start falling into your bed. You will start losing the feeling that you even have limbs. Like for me, I lay down. I'm a wrestler, martial artist, football player, badass like you, David.
Yeah.
My central nervous system doesn't trust anybody. So I shut my bedroom door, and this is for 17 years. I shut my bedroom door and I lie down. Now I take my shirt off and put the red light panel on, but I literally I completely put myself in a vulnerable state, and I always put my arms above my head. Now, invariably, about minute 8 or 9, I'm gone, and I don't even know if I have limbs. But my cats, 3 cats, all of them are 17 or 18 pounds. They're more like baby lions. They love NuCalm because they can hear what we can't hear. So they find me in my bed while I'm on NuCalm, and they start walking on me, and they're nesting so that they can sleep on me and feel the vibration of rescue. It's insane. I can't move, you guys. I know they're there, but even then I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. So once we suspend and separate the monkey mind from the body, that's when the healing happens. If you are emotionally connected to the melody, you'll notice the melody changes. Everything we do, it takes us 16 to 26 months to create a new program, because every second is composed musically with a mathematical matrix. But remember, the job of rescue is to suspend your brain's ability to control your body and separate you in this space. You don't have to do anything. NuCalm is not meditation. NuCalm is not thought-provoking. NuCalm is down-regulating you to 4 hertz. So just go with the flow. Allow myself the opportunity to relax and just let your mind wander. There's nothing you can do regardless. Even if you wanted to, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Does it provide any support for people who have seizures?
Oh, of course it does. So back in the day, we used to have a biochemical component to it, which was GABA A and GABA B. Well, what's the drug they give for epilepsy and seizures? Gabapentin. What's GABA? The body's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter that interrupts the HPA axis and downregulates stimulation. NuCalm, of course, for epilepsy and seizures. NuCalm, of course, for any type of brain injury. NuCalm, of course, for anything that you need to reduce stimulation and to reduce inflammation. Migraines is a great one. Migraine. You have a migraine. It's a little risky. NuCalm Rescue is vasodilatory. If I have a migraine, maybe it exacerbates the headache during the experience, and maybe it doesn't. It's not predictable. But what it does for migraines is there are triggers to migraines. You know what they are because if you have migraines, you've learned. Doing NuCalm Rescue every day diminishes the trigger, diminishes the influence of the trigger, diminishes the frequency of the migraines and the intensity of the migraines. So there's nothing that we have found in 17 years and millions of experiences across 106 countries and 6 continents that NuCalm can't help. There's nothing that the body says, oh, nah, I don't want to balance my nervous system today. I love stress and cortisol, and I'm good where I'm at. So it just doesn't work that way. So anything that you think logically, I wonder if this would help, it will help.
So I'm glad you said that, because the chat just went crazy about 5 minutes ago when you were going through that in the beginning, and they were putting up all the different medical issues, and like it's selective, like NuCalm is selective on which one you're going to help and which one you're not going to help with your nervous system. So I'm glad you addressed that. It can be beneficial for everything.
It's beneficial for everything. Listen, think about it this way. You're a monk-like meditator. Okay. If I can get into a monk-like meditative state, how is that negative to any aspect of my life? It's not. Yeah. This is a tool, a technology that brings your brainwave to the deepest state of meditation and healing. There is no disease on earth that NuCalm can't help. Period. And if you think of the 2,700,000 surgeries, You think about the millions of people that have used this for 17 years. There's not been a single reported adverse event. Why? Blake's genius was not creating and inventing this new thing. What he did was he used biomimetics to map how the brain naturally prepares you to relax for bed. We're just a biomimetic. We just happen to be during the daytime. Your brain doesn't want to take a nap. Your brain wants your to-do list. Your brain wants you to worry. Your amygdala loves to worry. So at 2 in the afternoon, your brain's like, hey, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for a nap. So NuCalm is using literally the same processes that the body uses at night to prepare you for sleep. That's what we're using. We just happen to be doing electrical signaling through physics in your ears. We can do no harm, people, period.
And it supports all recovery.
Ask anybody who's done surgery using NuCalm pre, post, and peri surgery. And it's incredible. The surgical response and the healing response is legendary. Why? It's logical, ladies and gentlemen. The inflammatory response of the human body is overcompensating. It brings a tank to a knife fight. It doesn't know. Anything that you do, it literally comes and says, here's information. Well, information is what's slowing down the healing process, creating the scar tissue, and creating the pain. If you stop the stress response, the inflammatory response goes down. Why do you think a professional athlete for 17 years would use NuCalm? Well, let's reduce inflammation, reduce lactic acid and muscle tension, and help you recover. Why do you think we've been working with the Department of Defense for 15 years? What do you think we came to them with? Expedited recovery without drugs. We have found the riddle of solving recovery by balancing your nervous system by suspending your brain in 4 hertz. It's not as complicated as you're making it. It's really simple. This is like understanding arithmetic and multiplication before you get into calculus. It's foundational to everything. And that's where we lie, in the foundation of everything.
Jim, a couple of years ago when you and I met, and before we really got into things, is once I got going and I realized the benefits, I was mad. It's like, why didn't they show this to me when I was 12, 15, 20, maybe 30? It would have been great, but nothing, nobody.
I've been a pioneer speaking alien to human for 17 years, David. And it's not that people don't want to know or people are hiding it. They just don't know. The central nervous system and the reticular activating system, for all its glory in helping us understand what we want to think about and not think about, it creates a pattern and it creates comfort. And comfort creates conformity. And conformity creates acquiescence. We get stuck in a pattern and we normalize every pattern. Look at allopathic Western medicine. For 100 years, it's been really good at making incremental improvements to mediocre technology. It's not advancing humanity. Seriously. Yeah. It's insane. For more than 100 years, neurobiofeedback's been around. For over 90 years, cranial electrotherapy stimulation has been around. For 100 years, transcranial direct current stimulation has been around. For 100 years, it has never been predictable across one human being or the population. I don't know. I'm going to apply logic and I'm going to ask a question. Why? Well, it's called the adrenal cortex, Jim. Some days you have a lot of adrenaline and other days you don't. And if I don't manage the biochemistry component to modulating you, I don't win doing just stimulation. So I look at medicine, I'm like, what are you doing? It's science that innovates, and it's people and consumers that drive that innovation and change. I have 3 girls, 24, 22, and 19. They're bright, and they'll ask me simple questions like, Dad, why is this? And my answer 9 out of 10 times is, follow the money. Follow the money. We as a human species are directed to follow the money. Imagine what life would be like if currency wasn't the goal of 8.4 billion people. Imagine if the goal was love or mutual respect, or life would be so different, but it's not. It's ingrained in our system to follow the money. Now, humans are really good at solving problems all the time. So everything is money driven. It changes behavioral patterns, and it changes people's risk tolerance, and it changes people's ability to think out of the box. One of the beautiful things about Blake Holloway, and there are many beautiful things, one of the beautiful things about this man was his humility. He didn't give a shit. He wasn't like, hey, I don't fully understand transcranial direct current stimulation, or I don't understand applied neuropsychobiology, I don't understand quantum physics. He went and he learned. He moved to Russia before perestroika to study cranial electrotherapy stimulation because that's where it was invented. His job was to find a solution. He didn't care about any of that stuff. So it was his humility and ability to be like, hey, maybe a little piece from here works. Maybe a little piece from here works. And you see how the evolution of the product was built. It was like Tinker toys. Hey, here's a Lego, and then we put it together. And in the patent architecture, we went to the patent office and said, hey, we didn't invent GABA, but we did this. We didn't invent blocking light and visual stimulation, but we did this. We didn't invent entrainment, but we did this. And the patent office came back and said, okay, that's nice. You'd better show us that 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. You better show us that 1 + 1 + 1 equals 11 or 12. That's what he figured out.
Wow. Last question. So for some of our practitioners or industry people who are on the webinar here tonight, is if they wanted to get, good and allow them to use this in their practice or in their wellness clinics, et cetera, what would you recommend?
Which product on the app?
On just trying to take the app, bring it to your practice, and really help people. So
Rescue's the key for every practitioner in the world. I don't think there's any other program that anybody's using literally across the world from every modality in the world you can think of. So it's rescue, 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 rescue. And you turn people onto it. Now, there's an operational efficiency or inefficiency to it. Both my parents are psychotherapists, and they learned early on, hey, I'd really like to work with somebody who's got a balanced nervous system and isn't coming to me with anticipatory anxiety, fear, all the things that psychotherapists have to contest with. So they would actually have people come and they would NuCalm them, because it used to be a $6,000 medical device. They would NuCalm them in a separate room and then have them come in for therapy. But for the patient, that means now your 50-minute sessions now 2 hours. So how you work through your operational efficiency is up to you. But
right.
we had a periodontal surgeon who was just a really smart marketing guy. He said, listen, nobody wants to come see me. I'm taking teeth out of your skull. That's not fun. So when you walk in, there was a zero gravity chair in the reception area, and he always had a patient passed out on rescue. So they come in and be like, I want that. So there's a myriad of ways to implement this. The key is this: use NuCalm yourself, get astute with it, understand it. There's a cumulative benefit, and use rescue every day. As a clinician, you are a care provider. As a care provider, you typically care for others before yourself. Well, that's not a great recipe. My mother was a psychotherapist for complex trauma for 40 years, and her body is broken. Her visceral organs are broken. Her immunosuppressive, diseases are proliferating because she didn't take care of herself. So use rescue every day for yourself so you can be a better practitioner and have, just be a better human. Then start sharing this with your patients. From neurology to, functional medicine. If you're in functional integrative medicine, you're seeing just a proliferation of immunosuppressive diseases in the gut. You're seeing leaky gut and Candida albicans and H. pylori, and you're seeing all this stuff. It's a result of our food supply being poisoned for 4 decades. Okay, but all of it's also directly related to your nervous system. I can't think of a single patient coming to see any medical practitioner that doesn't benefit from a balanced nervous system. So you turn people on with it. You tell them, hey, this is something that I use, and it's something you should use. And I recommend that you download it. It's a 7-day free trial. And in Social X, not only do you go get the product, you can actually make a business out of it. So it's a double win. This is about your exploration, your understanding, your confidence, and then your communication, because your words land. Your words have influence. People are coming to see you. They're vulnerable. They want help. They want solutions. They want answers. Don't be shy. Give them the answer and just turn them on to it. Educate them.
Jim, that's terrific. People wanted it to hear, how do I make that leap, or where's that big step, or whatever, and who's done it, and what do I do? So thank you very much. I just want to share with everybody, if you're out there and you're thinking about the person who invited you here can give you all the information. If you get signed up in the business, I think Jim, and I'm going to ask you right now on the show here, is if we have a great enough response, which I believe we will, can we have you get you back here in 2 weeks so they can bring their guests after they sign up and bring their guests back so that you can do your thing just like you did tonight, but just a little bit different. We'll have a different theme with a different group. Instead of medical, it may be, something else.
We're on a mission, David, to solve stress for humanity. Any force multiplier, anybody who comes to the enterprise and says, hey, I want to learn, we're going to teach. Anything you want from us, we're going to deliver. This is about education. We can't help solve stress and poor sleep if you don't know we exist. And we can't outmarket 100 years of pharmaceutical marketing every day. So this is what this is. It's a force multiplier of good people doing good things for good people. And it's always been about education. I don't need to sell you anything. I don't believe in imposing my will on you. And I also don't believe in buyer's remorse. What I believe in is education. If you're not aware of the possibilities, you can't take an informed decision as a consenting adult. That's all I care about. So yes, I will be here for you and for anybody within the Social X family to help support the education, the confidence, and the clarity of what is this. But really, ladies and gentlemen, the words are powerful. They're nothing compared to the experience. Just use it. And use it with your biochemistry, your biorhythm, what you want. I have habits, and I'm always stacking my habits. But every day, there are 2 habits that are non-negotiable. I use Rescue every day. I did 4 podcasts today. In between my second and third, I had 31 minutes. I ran upstairs and took my shirt off. I got the red light on me. I did 22 minutes and 27 seconds, Rescue VT, Volume 1, got up, put my suit back on, and I was downstairs. I'm never going to miss it because I deserve a balanced nervous system, and I don't want to relinquish command to the monkey mind anymore. I haven't spent a calorie on worry in more than a decade. I don't know what it means to worry. So my life is addition by subtraction. So we will educate anytime you ask me to educate. And yes, it would be nice to have, a quorum of people because this is a force multiplier and we're here to take care of people. So thank you for the invitation, and I'd love to come back.
Come back tentatively, everybody. We've set a date of April 30th. 6 p.m., same time. Jim will be back. So for everybody who's out there, get started, get in the business, get educated, and then start to build to that event. So thank you, everybody. Jim, I really, really appreciate it. And with everybody else out there, it's always amazing. And I learned something that I should have learned 50 years ago. So thank you.
It's not easy to teach an old dog new tricks, so I feel proud.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jim.